La Isla del Encanto, which translates to the Island of Enchantment, which is a nickname for Puerto Rico, and let me tell you, this island lives up to its nickname. It's absolutely gorgeous here. The people are amazingly friendly and fantastic. If anybody is trying to figure out where you want to vacation next, I highly recommend Puerto Rico. So even though this island is beautiful, it does have its fair share of ghost stories, and I really wanted to share a couple of those today. I found a lot more than I'm going to share with you today, but those stories just aren't quite fleshed out in the way that I really wanted to present this video, so I picked a couple of my favorite stories and we're just gonna run with those. Let's go ahead and get started. So this urban legend starts in the early years of the last century, and this man is crossing the Bridge Mavilla in Corozal, Puerto Rico, which is a little bit more central Puerto Rico-ish. This bridge was built in 1903, and this man, it is said that he was riding on the bridge in the middle of the night and he started to hear a baby crying out in the woods. So naturally, he gets a little concerned and he decides to go investigate and see if he can't find this baby that's crying. So he starts looking and he ends up finding this baby just on the ground. He picks it up very concerned. He doesn't know where the mother is. It's just all alone on the floor in the woods. So he picks it up and figures maybe it's crying because it's hungry. He doesn't know how long it's been alone. He's just trying to figure out what's going on. So he reaches into his bag and pulls out a piece of bread. And when he tries to hand this baby this piece of bread, it looks him straight in the eye and busts out in this huge smile. Now, normally, babies are adorable. A baby smiling is nothing to be worried about. It's actually very cute. But this man immediately noticed that when this baby smiled, it had a full row of razor-sharp teeth. Now this man is staring into this baby's mouth, trying to figure out what the heck is going on, when all of a sudden this baby starts, it's described in the urban legend as demonically cackling. Naturally, the man freaks out, drops the baby on the ground, runs to his horse, gets on, and just books it away, just leaves the baby in the middle of the forest. He thought that it was the devil himself, and he was trying to coax the man off the trail so that he could take him to hell. So it is said to this day, if you cross the Bridge Mavilla when the moon is high, you will hear a baby crying. But, you know, don't go look for it because it might eat your face. I don't know. The next ghost story that I have, it is at the Normandie Hotel. Now, this hotel was built by a very famous Puerto Rican engineer named Felix for his new French wife. This hotel opened its doors in 1942, and it was built to be an exact replica of the SS Normandie, which was a pre-war French cruise liner. There's a couple of different stories that I read online that explained why he chose to replicate the SS Normandie. It was for a honeymoon gift for his new French wife and to make her feel more comfortable in Puerto Rico. But one said that he built the SS Normandie because it is where they met and fell in love. And another story was they actually met and fell in love in France, and they took the SS Normandie as their honeymoon from Europe back to Puerto Rico. So I'm not sure which story is true, but I saw both. I'll just put both out there. So even though this hotel opened in 1942, it did suffer a lot financially and just stability-wise. It opened and closed multiple times throughout the years before officially closing its doors in 2008. It is said that a woman had committed suicide at some point in this hotel, and you can still hear her cries and you can hear screaming in the hotel, supposedly. Security guards have said this, and security guards also say that she still walks the halls on the floor that she committed suicide at, and I couldn't figure out what floor it was. It did not say. The other apparition that haunts the Normandie Hotel is mildly hilarious. So the French wife of Felix, the Puerto Rican engineer. She was, let's just say, very French. She was kind of an exhibitionist, and she liked to show her body. So she would often be seen skinny dipping in the pool that was next to the lobby, and she would also just walk around the lobby and hang out with guests at the hotel completely naked. And it is said that people have seen a naked apparition walking around the lobby and also swimming in the hotel pool. That's just a really weird thing that I don't think I've ever heard of a naked ghost before, so that's pretty funny. I mean, she must really love the hotel that her husband built for her, so she decided to stay, which is very sweet, but I don't want to see a naked ghost walking around. The next haunted location that I found is called Hotel El Convento, which was a convent back in the day that was transformed into a hotel that now you can actually stay in. It's in Old San Juan. It used to be called the Carmelite Convent, and it was run by a woman. This is a long name, there's going to be a couple of cuts. Doña Ana de Lanzos y Mendez de Valdez. Doña Ana was the very first Mother Superior of this convent, and the way that she became Mother Superior is actually rather tragic. Her and her husband were living in Old San Juan in that house that she ended up converting into a convent. They were fairly well off. They had a very nice home. It was very large with many rooms. Now, at one point, the Dutch were attacking Puerto Rico at El Morro, one of the forts that I'm actually going to be talking about next. Her husband was ready to take up arms and stormed out to help defend Puerto Rico from the Dutch. While the Dutch ended up retreating and were not successful in their mission to take Puerto Rico, unfortunately, Doña Ana's husband lost his life in the battle. So, completely grief-stricken, she decided to dedicate her life to God and become a nun, and that's when she converted her home into the convent, which is very selfless, a very beautiful thing to do in honor of her late husband. Haunting comes into play because supposedly you can still hear the robes of the nuns swishing back and forth in the hallways. You can still hear them walking down. Some people have stated that they have actually seen full apparitions of nuns walking the hallways in this hotel as well. Now, the main haunting is also kind of funny. I don't know why. Most of these stories make me laugh. Most of these Puerto Rican ghost stories are kind of funny in some way. But you can actually rent out Doña Ana's room at this hotel. It's one of the rooms that you are allowed to have and rent out. And apparently, if you sleep in too late, guests have reported feeling hands waking them up to get up for the day. And it is said that that is Doña Ana's spirit, making sure that people don't sleep in too late. Which is hilarious. She's still like, get the heck up. Like, the sun is out. Wake up, start your day. Like, that's just hilarious to me. The ghost takes it upon herself to be like, you're done. Get out of my room. Now, the last two locations that I'm going to be covering are kind of connected in a way. They are the two forts that are in Old San Juan. If you get a chance to visit, they are drop dead gorgeous. I love going to these forts. You can also, they have historic tours that you can walk into the forts and take, and it's just beautiful. It's very family friendly. At one of these places, at El Morro actually, it's just kind of a thing to go down to there's a huge grass area and people just fly kites there. And it's beautiful. If you're ever here, please go visit in Old San Juan, these two forts. But the first one that I'm going to be talking about, Castillo San Felipe de Morro. Apologize for the accent again. People just call it El Morro for short. Now, this is one of the oldest forts built by the Spaniards in the Caribbean, and it's really mainly because Puerto Rico was such an important location. This land, everybody wanted it, so of course they're going to build a huge fortification. It's one of the largest as well, built in the Caribbean by the Spaniards, and it took over 250 years to complete construction. It was in construction from the years 1539 through 1787. Many other nations were trying to take Puerto Rico because of how important the placement of this land was. One of the most famous people to ever attack Puerto Rico was Sir Francis Drake, the famous British privateer. So getting back to the actual ghost stories, it is said that at night, if you are on the walls of El Morro and you look out onto the horizon over the Bay of San Juan, it is said that you can see the silhouettes of the ghost ships of every single nation that ever tried to attack San Juan and was unsuccessful. And it's stated that they are just waiting for their opportunity to try again. It's also stated that you can hear the wails of injured soldiers, you can hear the clanking of chains from the prisoners that were taken at El Morro, and it's said that you can see soldiers walking to their posts, and you can even see soldiers walking with prisoners with their shackles rattling. It's also stated that there is a woman in white that roams El Morro's grounds, and if you know what a woman in white is, there's no history that goes along with this, so I don't know why it is said that she is there, but a woman in white is traditionally a woman whose husband cheated on her and she goes crazy and kills her children, and then she is forced to spend the afterlife looking for the children, which is tragic, and one of them is wandering El Morro, so I really wonder what actually happened there, if this is true and there actually is a woman in white. I wish there was some kind of historical backing to that. So now we are moving on to Castillo San Cristobal, which people just call Cristobal. So this one was built from 1634 through 1790, and it is the largest fort that the Spaniards ever built in the Caribbean. Now, El Morro was built to protect from attack by sea, while San Cristobal was built to protect from attacks by land. Now, there are two separate ghost stories that I want to touch on just from this location. The first one is of the sentry box, which is where the soldiers would stand. I'll put a picture up. It's where the soldiers would stand on guard to overlook the bay and make sure that everything was okay. And these sentry boxes were called garitas. And this is the story of Garita del Diablo. There was one sentry box in particular that none of the soldiers particularly wanted to go. It was further away from all the other sentry boxes, and it was also much closer to the ocean. So when you were in it, it was constantly just very loud. You would hear the roaring of the waves, the howling of the wind, and it was very hard to communicate with the other guards. The guards would communicate with each other by yelling to make sure that everybody was awake, make sure everything was okay, and you had to yell particularly loud from that sentry box, but also from the other guard posts to communicate to that sentry box. One night, a soldier named Sanchez was not responding to any of the calls from the other soldiers. Now, the soldiers got very concerned, but they were not allowed to leave their posts to check on him. So as soon as the sun rised and they were permitted to leave, they went to check, and all that was left of Sanchez was his guard uniform and his rifle. Now, this led the guards into panic, and they believed that the devil had actually taken him in the night, and that's where the legend got started. Now, locals also offer a much more plausible explanation for this. Apparently, Sanchez was head over heels in love for a woman named Diana. Now, Sanchez and Diana were very much in love, and he would often play her songs from his guitar and sing to her about his love for her. And unfortunately, his superior guards and Diana's grandmother were completely disapproving of the relationship, and they did not want them to be together at all. So it is said that in the middle of the night, when she knew that he was going to be at the furthest sentry box, they concocted a plan where she would bring him civilian clothes, which would explain why he left his guard uniform and the rifle, and he abandoned post and ran away with Diana, which is a much more beautiful story, a much cuter story than the devil stole him in the middle of the night. That's terrifying, and I hope that's not the case. This sentry box is now inaccessible to the public, not because it's off limits, but because it's just very dangerous to get to. It's very rocky, there's a lot of cliffs, and they've just kind of let it fall to the wayside. It's not very safe to go to. If you are brave enough and you get to the sentry box, it is said that you can still hear Sanchez playing his guitar for Diana, and you can hear laughter. That's where the ghost story comes back. It is supposedly haunted. So the last story, as promised, is a real life Romeo and Juliet-esque story. Back in the day, there was a young woman named Maria who had fallen in love with a thief named Betancourt. Now, Maria's father was the town executioner, and you can kind of see where the story is going. He would not have approved of Maria falling in love with and subsequently marrying a common thief. So she kept this a secret from her father. He did not know anything about their relationship, and they were planning to run away to get married. Unfortunately, one day Betancourt actually got caught stealing, so he was sentenced to death. And unfortunately, it was Maria's father's job to carry out the execution. He was hung by the neck from the walls of Castillo San Cristobal. His body was left there as a warning to other thieves. Now, Maria did not know that Betancourt had been put to death. She didn't know he had been captured or anything, especially since her father didn't know that they were in a relationship. He didn't even think to tell her. Maria one day is walking down the road and she sees a new person hanging on the wall, and she goes to investigate and sees that it is, unfortunately, the love of her life, Betancourt. Now, overcome with grief, knowing that it was her father that had ended up putting him to death, she got up on the wall as well and found the noose that was next to Betancourt and hung herself next to him. A few hours later, Maria's father was coming to take the body of Betancourt down because they didn't leave them up for long, and he stumbled across the body of his own daughter Maria hanging next to the common thief. That is so tragic. I could not imagine being in that father's shoes. He didn't even know that they were together, so it's such a sad story, but it kind of has a happy ending because it is said that you can still see Maria and Betancourt walking the grounds hand in hand together today as full apparitions. So happy ending, kind of. So I hope you enjoyed these ghost stories from Puerto Rico. I think that they're very interesting. A lot of them are rooted in real history, so that does make them a little bit more credible. What do you think? Do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe that these places are actually haunted, or do you think it's just a myth? I look forward to talking about more ghost stories next Saturday on this continued series of Supernatural Saturday. And I hope y'all have a fantastic weekend. Happy Saturday.